Hello, everyone. Tonight, we begin with a question about power woven through love, or at least through vows. Have you ever wondered how a single wedding could redraw the map of a continent? Join us to explore this dramatic and surprising story. Now, picture yourself in a 1300s European castle, stone walls flickering with torchlight, the air thick with the scent of wax and rosemary. A young bride draped in velvet stands before a crowd of nobles, her heart pounding as she binds her fate to a foreign prince. These aren't just weddings, they're the threads stitching kingdoms together, and you're about to unravel their secrets. You might not make it through this tale awake, so settle in. Before you snuggle into your blanket, hit like on the video and comment where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's so fun to know who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand in the heart of 14th century Europe, where kings and queens wield marriage like a blade carving alliances from chaos. The continent hums with ambition. France and England clash in the 100 Years' War. Castile wrestles with internal strife, and the Holy Roman Empire sprawls a patchwork of loyalties. Amid this, royal brides are more than daughters. They're diplomats in silk, their hands offered to seal pacts or end wars. You feel the weight of their choices, each vow a gamble for peace or power. Imagine holding a quill to sign a betrothal contract. How steady is your hand? These women, often teenagers, navigate courts where whispers cut deeper than swords. Their marriages aren't just personal. They're the scaffolding of empires. Take Eleanor, a princess of Castile, her dark eyes scanning a crowded hall in Aragon. She's barely 16, but her marriage to Alfonso IV in 1329 is no mere ceremony. It's a calculated move tying Castile's might to Aragon's Mediterranean dreams. You hear the clink of goblets as nobles toast the union, their smiles masking schemes. Aragon gains a foothold in Castile's trade routes, while Castile secures an ally against rebellious nobles. Historians still argue whether Eleanor's dowry lands along the border tipped the balance too far, weakening Castile's frontier. A quirky tidbit: Eleanor insisted on bringing her favorite falcon to Aragon, a creature so fierce it once snatched a knight's cap during negotiations, lightening the room's tension. You smile, picturing the bird's talons glinting like the ambition in the room. The mainstream fact is clear. By 1300, marriage alliances were Europe's diplomatic currency, with over 70% of royal unions crossing borders to secure peace or territory. These weren't love matches. Love was a luxury, like a jester's jest at a tense feast. Speaking of jests, choosing a bride was like picking a horse you hoped for strength, but sometimes you got a stubborn mule. Eleanor's marriage, though, works like a well-timed banquet. You see her adjust her heavy crown, her fingers trembling, but her gaze steady. She knows her role to bear, heirs charm the court, and keep Castile's interests alive in Aragon's halls. Her dowry includes gold, but also promises that could crumble if Alfonso's temper, rumored to flare like a summer storm, turns against her. You walk beside Eleanor as she enters Zaragoz's cathedral, the air cool despite the summer heat. Her gown embroidered with Castile's lions brushes the stone floor. The priest's Latin chants echo, and you catch a glimpse of Koa, a young scribe from Castile's court nervously clutching a parchment. He's here to record the vows. His ink-stained fingers shaking, he's seen too many treaties broken. Beside him stands Lani, a sharp-eyed lady-in-waiting, her braided cord necklace a gift from Eleanor's mother. Lani whispers to Koa, "Breathe, lad, or you'll faint before the feast." Their presence grounds you, humanizing the grandeur. Tua, An elder diplomat with a carved staff watches from the shadows, his nod to Eleanor, a silent approval. These three, Koa, Lani, and Tua, will weave through this tale, their small gestures anchoring the sweep of history. The ceremony ends, and you follow the crowd to the banquet. Tables groan under roasted boar and spiced wine, the scent mingling with intrigue. Nobles from both kingdoms eye each other wary as hounds circling a bone. Eleanor's falcon perched nearby lets out a sharp cry, and laughter ripples. Another jest lands as a lord quips, "That bird's got more nerve than half the council." But beneath the mirth, you sense the stakes. If Eleanor falters, if she fails to sway Alfonso or produce an heir, Castile's borderlands could face raids. Aragon might renege on trade promises. You feel the pressure, like a tightening corset, as Eleanor rises to speak. Her voice soft but clear. Thanks the court, her words a delicate dance of loyalty to both realms. As the night deepens, you linger in the hall's flicker. Eleanor's marriage is just the first thread in a tapestry of alliances. You ponder its fragility. Will it hold against rival claims like a ship braving a squall? Koa scribbles notes, Lani adjusts Eleanor's veil, and Tua murmurs a proverb about trust being harder to forge than gold. The third jest slips in, a minstrel sings of a knight who wed for land but found only goats, and the room chuckles, though some glance at Alfonso warily. You're drawn into this world where every smile hides a strategy, every vow a risk. The stars outside gleam, but here in the torchlit hall, Europe's future is being shaped one bride at a time. You step into the sunlit court of Aragon, where the air carries the tang of olive groves and ambition. Eleanor of Castile, now queen, navigates her new role, her marriage to Alfonso IV in 1329, a bridge between Castile and Aragon. You feel the weight of her crown heavier now as she balances loyalty to her homeland with the demands of her husband's kingdom. The alliance is young, like a sapling in a storm, and you sense the eyes of Aragon's nobles on her, judging every step. Imagine standing in her slippers. How do you charm a court that sees you as an outsider? Her task is to solidify this pact, turning parchment promises into lasting power. While Aragon's gaze stretches toward the Mediterranean's glittering trade routes, the hall buzzes with activity, silk robes rustling as lords debate Sicily's contested crown. Eleanor's marriage has given Aragon leverage, her dowry lands strengthening their borders. You hear Alfonso's voice, sharp as a blade, demanding loyalty from his council. He's a man of fire, they say, his temper like a summer blaze, quick to flare, slow to fade. Eleanor, though, moves with grace, her dark eyes catching every glance. She speaks of Castile's harvests, weaving tales of plenty to remind Aragon of her value. A quirky tidbit, she's taken to wearing a Castilian amulet, a tiny silver lion, which some whisper is charmed to ward off deceit. You smile, imagining the court's gossip, as if a trinket could tame intrigue. Historians still argue whether Eleanor's influence softened Alfonso's expansionist dreams or fueled them. The mainstream fact is undeniable. Aragon's 14th century rise owed much to strategic marriages, with over half its territorial gains tied to dynastic unions. Eleanor's role is no small feat. Her presence ensures Castile's support against Navarre's border raids. You watch her host a banquet, the tables laden with figs and roasted quail, the scent curling through the air. She laughs at a lord's jest, but her hand lingers near her amulet, a quiet signal of her vigilance. Speaking of jests, one lord quips that Aragon's council argues like a flock of gulls over a fish, loud and pointless. The room chuckles, but you catch the tension beneath. Koa, the nervous scribe, hovers nearby, his quill scratching as he records trade agreements. His ink-stained fingers fumble when a noble spills wine, and you feel his panic like a sparrow caught in a gale. Lonnie, ever watchful, nudges him with a grin, her braided cord necklace glinting. "Focus, Koa, or you'll write a treaty for the chickens," she teases, her voice a soft anchor. Tua, leaning on his carved staff, watches Eleanor murmuring to you. A queen's smile is her shield, but her mind is her sword. Their presence steadies you, grounding the grandeur in human moments. You see Lonnie adjust Eleanor's sleeve, a small act of loyalty, while Koa whispers a prayer for calm. The court's rhythm shifts as Alfonso announces plans to press claims on Sardinia. You feel the room tighten like a bowstring drawn taut. Eleanor's role grows clearer. She must sway Alfonso to honor Castile's interests, ensuring their ports share in Mediterranean wealth. You walk with her through the palace gardens, the air warm with jasmine. She pauses by a fountain, its splash a soothing hum, and confides in Lonnie about her fears. Alfonso's temper, the court's whispers. Lonnie, twisting her necklace, urges her to trust her instincts like a sailor reading the stars. You admire Eleanor's resolve, her youth belying a mind honed by Castile's fractious court. Another jest lands. A minstrel sings of a knight who sailed for glory but found only seaweed, and Eleanor's laugh rings out, easing the noble's frowns. Yet danger looms. Navarre's envoys arrive, their smiles thin as a blade's edge, demanding concessions. You sense Eleanor's pulse quicken as she greets them, her amulet hidden beneath her gown. She speaks of unity, her words smooth as polished stone, but you catch Koa's wide-eyed glance. He knows Navarre's raids could unravel the alliance. Tua, tapping his staff, mutters that peace is like a tapestry. One loose thread, and it frays. The third jest slips in. A lady jests that Navarre's envoy has a beard so grand it hides his true intentions. Laughter ripples, but Eleanor's eyes stay sharp, reading the envoy's bow. As twilight settles over Zaragoza, you linger by a courtyard fountain, its gentle splash mingling with the scent of jasmine. Eleanor's marriage is a keystone, yet delicate like a sail catching a fickle breeze. Can she temper Alfonso's fire or outmaneuver Navarre's cunning? Koa pauses his quill, still glancing at Eleanor's amulet with quiet awe. Lonnie, brushing dust from her sleeve, murmurs strength to him, her necklace a faint gleam. Tua, his staff tracing patterns in the earth, whispers, "Trust is a garden nurtured or lost." The moon rises silver over Aragon's towers, and Eleanor's choices carve its future. You feel her resolve, a quiet pulse, and wonder if this bond will hold. You find yourself in the bustling court of Castile, where the air hums with the scent of leather and ambition, and the clatter of hooves echoes from the stables below. Isabella of Castile, a young princess with a will like forged iron, stands at the heart of a pivotal moment. Her marriage to Ferdinand of Aragon in 1369 is no mere union. It's the spark that will ignite Castile's rise, binding two crowns against a tide of rivals. You feel the tension in the room, thick as the tapestries on the walls, as nobles whisper of war and succession. Imagine gripping the arm of a carved chair. How tightly do you hold on when a kingdom's fate rests on a vow? Isabella's task is to forge unity, her marriage a beacon for a fractured land. The court is a maze of loyalties, with Castile torn by noble feuds and threats from Portugal. Isabella's betrothal to Ferdinand, sealed in secret to thwart her half-brother's schemes, is a daring gambit. You hear the rustle of her gown embroidered with Castile's castles as she greets envoys with a steady gaze. Her dowry gold and border towns bolsters Aragon's strength, but it's her resolve that anchors the alliance. A quirky tidbit, Isabella carried a small prayer book, its pages worn from her nightly readings, which some swore calmed storms during her journey to Aragon. You chuckle, picturing skeptical lords eyeing the sky, half expecting miracles. Historians still argue whether Isabella's marriage was the true catalyst for Castile's unification, or merely a step in a longer struggle. The mainstream fact stands by the late 1300s. Castile's strategic marriages, like Isabella's, secured alliances that doubled its territorial influence. Her union with Ferdinand is a masterstroke, aligning Castile's armies with Aragon's naval might. You watch her at a feast, the air rich with roasted venison and clove-spiced wine. She toasts Ferdinand, her smile warm but her eyes sharp, reading the room like a hawk. A jest lands. A knight quips that choosing a husband is like picking a lance too heavy, and you falter. Too light, and you miss. Laughter ripples, but you sense the undercurrent of doubt. Will this alliance hold? Koa the scribe is here, his ink-stained fingers trembling as he records the vows. He's traveled from Aragon, his loyalty to Eleanor now joined by awe for Isabella. He fumbles a quill, and Lonnie, her braided cord necklace catching the candlelight, nudges him. Steady, Koa, or you'll write Castile into Portugal's hands. She teases, her voice a soft tether. Tua, leaning on his carved staff, watches Isabella with a nod, murmuring. A queen's heart bends, but her will does not. Their presence grounds you, their small gestures, like Lonnie smoothing Isabella's veil, or Koa whispering a prayer, humanizing the stakes. You feel the pulse of history each moment, a thread in Castile's tapestry. The ceremony unfolds in Valladolid's cathedral, the air cool with incense and stone. Isabella's voice clear as a bell echoes through the vaults, her vows a promise of unity. You stand among the crowd, catching Ferdinand's glance. His ambition matches hers, like two rivers joining. But danger lurks. Portugal's envoys, their smiles tight, hint at border raids if the marriage proceeds. You feel Isabella's resolve like a flame in a gale as she counters their threats with talk of shared trade. Another jest slips in. A minstrel sings of a lord who wed for peace, but found only squabbles, and the crowd laughs, though some glance at Portugal's men warily. As the feast begins, you walk with Isabella through the torchlit hall, the clink of goblets mingling with murmured plots. She pauses by a window, the night air sharp with the promise of autumn, and confides in Lonnie. Ferdinand dreams of empires, but I dream of Castile whole. She whispers, her prayer book tucked close. Lonnie, twisting her necklace, urges her to trust her fire like a smith forging steel. You admire Isabella's clarity, her youth no barrier to her vision. The third jest lands. A lady jests that Portugal's envoy has boots so polished they reflect his scheming heart. The room chuckles, but Isabella's gaze stays fixed, reading the envoy's bow like a map. As candles burn low in Valladolid, you stand by an open window, the night air sharp with autumn's bite. Isabella's marriage is a spark, yet fragile like embers in a gust. Will she guide Ferdinand's ambition or thwart Portugal's schemes? Koa clutches his prayer book, his fingers steadier now, inspired by Isabella's fire. Lonnie, her necklace catching the candlelight, offers him a reassuring nod. Tua, his staff resting against a wall, murmurs, "Unity is a fortress built or breached." The horizon glows faintly, and Isabella's vows shape Castile's dawn. You feel the weight of her dream, a steady hum, and wonder how this union will endure. You stand in the opulent court of Navarre, where the air is heavy with the scent of lavender and whispered secrets, and the flicker of candlelight dances on gilded walls. Joanna of Navarre. A young princess with a sharp mind and a guarded heart steps into the heart of French intrigue. Her marriage to Philip IV of France in 1305 is a delicate thread, weaving Navarre's small but strategic kingdom into the volatile tapestry of France's court. You feel the weight of her jeweled veil, the eyes of French nobles sizing her up like hawks circling prey. Imagine holding a goblet of wine. How steady is your grip when every sip hides a plot? Joanna's task is to navigate this labyrinth, her vows a bridge between Navarre's independence and France's ambition. The French court is a cauldron of rivalries, with factions vying for the king's ear and England's shadow looming across the channel. Joanna's marriage secures Navarre's borders, her dowry of vineyards and toll rights sweetening France's trade. You hear the murmur of silk as she glides through the hall, her presence a quiet challenge to those who underestimate her. A quirky tidbit: Joanna brought a pet lark to Paris, its cage adorned with tiny bells that chimed during tense councils, startling dour lords into smiles. You grin, picturing the bird's melody cutting through their scheming like a breeze through the fog. Historians still argue whether Joanna's influence tempered Philip's ruthless policies or merely shielded Navarre from his grasp. The mainstream fact is clear: by 1300, France's royal marriages, like Joanna's anchored alliances that shaped the Hundred Years' War's early phase. Her union ensures Navarre's voice in French councils, a voice she wields with precision. You watch her at a banquet, the air rich with roasted pheasant and honeyed mead. She speaks of Navarre's mountain passes, her words a subtle reminder of her kingdom's worth. A jest lands, a courtier quips that French politics is like a stew, too many cooks, and it spoils. Laughter ripples, but you catch the glint of suspicion in the noble's eyes. Koa, the scribe, is here, his quill trembling as he records Joanna's correspondence. He's followed her from Castile, his loyalty now tinged with awe at her poise. He drops an inkpot, and Lonnie, her braided cord necklace glinting, catches it with a smirk. "Careful, Koa, or you'll drown us in ink," she whispers, her voice a soft anchor. Tua, leaning on his carved staff, watches Joanna with a nod, murmuring. A queen's silence speaks louder than a king's shout. Their presence steadies you, their gestures, like Lonnie adjusting Joanna's sleeve, or Koa muttering a prayer, grounding the court's grandeur. You feel the pulse of intrigue each moment, a knot in France's web. The ceremony in Notre Dame's shadow is a spectacle, the air thick with incense and the hum of Latin chants. Joanna's voice, soft but firm, carries her vows, binding her to Philip and France to Navarre. You stand among the crowd, catching Philip's gaze. His ambition burns like a forge, but Joanna's eyes hold a spark of defiance. Danger stirs Champagne's lords, their smiles sharp hint at taxing Navarre's trade routes. You sense Joanna's resolve, like a river carving stone, as she counters with offers of shared tolls. Another jest slips in: a minstrel sings of a lord who wed for gold but found only debts, and the crowd chuckles, though some glance at Philip warily. As the feast unfolds, you walk with Joanna through the torchlit hall, the clink of silver mingling with hushed plots. She pauses by a tapestry, its threads depicting a hunt, and confides in Lonnie. "Philip seeks crowns, but I seek Navarre's freedom," she murmurs, her lark's cage nearby. Its bells a faint chime. Lonnie, twisting her necklace, urges her to trust her wit like a weaver threading a loom. You admire Joanna's clarity, her youth no match for her cunning. The third jest lands, a lady jests that Champagne's lord has a nose so keen it sniffs out taxes before they're set. The room laughs, but Joanna's gaze stays sharp, reading the lord's bow like a cipher. As moonlight filters through Paris's tapestries, you linger in a quiet alcove, the air soft with lavender. Joanna's marriage is a tapestry, yet delicate, like threads under strain. Can she sway Philip's heart or outwit Champagne's greed? Koa, his quill poised, watches Joanna's lark with a shy smile, his nerves easing. Lonnie, adjusting her necklace, whispers hope to him, her voice a gentle tide. Tua, his staff tapping softly, murmurs, "Cunning is a loom woven with care." The city hums beyond, and Joanna's choices thread France's fate. You feel her vigilance a steady pulse, and wonder if this pact will hold. You drift into the wind-swept halls of Denmark, where the air carries the bite of salt and the murmur of Nordic ambition. Margaret of Denmark, a young princess with a gaze as steady as the North Star, stands poised to unite kingdoms. Her marriage to Håkon VI of Norway in 1363 is a bold stroke, weaving Denmark, Norway, and Sweden into a fragile Scandinavian tapestry. You feel the chill of the stone floor beneath her fur-lined slippers, the weight of a crown not yet hers, but already shaping her path. Imagine holding a carved horn of mead. How firmly do you grasp it when a single toast could bind 3 crowns? Margaret's task is to forge this union, her vows a beacon for a region torn by rival claims. The Nordic courts are a storm of egos, with Sweden's nobles eyeing Denmark's growing power, and Norway's ports vital to Baltic trade. Margaret's marriage secures a dynastic pact, her dowry of Jutland estates strengthening Norway's coffers. You hear the creak of wooden beams as she enters the hall, her cloak embroidered with Denmark's lions. Her presence quiets the room like a lull before a gale. A quirky tidbit. Margaret carried a small bone amulet etched with runes, said to bring calm to stormy seas, a gift from a Gotland wise woman. You smile, imagining skeptical jarls glancing at it, half hoping for its magic. Historians still debate whether Margaret's marriage laid the foundation for the Kalmar Union or merely delayed Nordic feuds. The mainstream fact is clear. By the 1360s, Scandinavian marriages, like Margaret's, shifted Baltic power, with Denmark's territorial influence doubling through such alliances. Her union with Håkon is a linchpin, tying Norway's fleets to Denmark's armies. You watch her at a feast, the air thick with smoked fish and barley ale. She speaks of shared trade routes, her voice soft but unyielding, like a river flowing over stone. A jest lands jesting, that a noblewoman quips that uniting kingdoms is like herding reindeer pushed too hard and they scatter. Laughter echoes, but you sense the unease in the room. Koa the scribe is here, his quill trembling as he records the vows, his journey from Navarre leaving him awestruck by Margaret's calm. He fumbles a parchment, and Lonnie, her braided cord necklace glinting, steadies him with a grin. "Easy, Koa, or you'll ride us into Iceland," she teases, her voice a warm thread in the cold hall. Tua, leaning on his carved staff, watches Margaret, murmuring, "A queen's strength is her patience, like ice that holds a river." Their presence anchors you. Their gestures, like Lonnie adjusting Margaret's cloak, or Koa whispering a prayer, softening the court's grandeur. You feel the pulse of history each moment, a knot in Scandinavia's weave. The ceremony unfolds in Copenhagen's stone chapel, the air sharp with pine and incense. Margaret's vows clear as a bell bind her to Håkon and Denmark to Norway, with Sweden's envoys watching closely. You stand among the crowd, catching Håkon's nod. His ambition matches hers like two tides meeting. But danger stirs Swedish lords, their intentions veiled hint at breaking the pact if Denmark grows too bold. You sense Margaret's resolve like a flame in the icy frost as she counters with talk of Baltic unity. Another jest slips in, jesting that a skald sings rompingly of a lord who wed for peace but found only squabbles, and the crowd chuckles, though some eye the Swedes warily with caution. As embers, the feast begins. You walk with Margaret through the glow in torchlit hall, the clink of a hearth mingling with the scent of pine. She pauses by a fire, its warmth a steady hum, and confides in Lonnie, whispering to her. "You know I dream of one north," she says, her rune-etched amulet tucked away. Lonnie, twisting her corded necklace, urges her to trust her vision like a wise sailor reading the wind's secrets. You admire Margaret's clarity, how her youth bows to no barrier. Another jest lands lightly. A lady muses that Sweden's envoy's beard is so thick it might hide his true loyalties. The hall hums with laughter, but Margaret's gaze remains sharp, unwavering. As embers glow in Copenhagen's hall, you stand by a hearth, its warmth mingling with the scent of pine. Margaret's marriage is a beacon, yet fragile, like a delicate flame in a storm. Will she bind Haakon's dreams or ease Sweden's doubts? You wonder, Koa, scribbling with quiet focus, glancing at her amulet with awe. Lonnie, her corded necklace catching light, offers a gentle jest to ease his nerves. Tua, his staff resting, murmurs, "Patience weaves a stronger tide." The northern sky shimmers faintly, and Margaret's choices carve the north's course. You feel her strength, a soft pulse, and ponder if this bond will hold. You step into the grand halls of the Holy Roman Empire, where the air hums with the scent of wax and ambition, and the clink of armor echoes from the distant corridors. Blanche of Artois, a princess with a quiet strength and piercing eyes, stands at the heart of a pivotal alliance. Her marriage to Rudolf of Habsburg in 1300 is a calculated move, shifting loyalties in a sprawling empire of feuding princes. You feel the weight of her velvet gown, the gaze of German lords assessing her like scribes over a ledger. Imagine holding a silver chalice. How steady is your hand when a single toast could tilt the empire's balance? Blanche's task is to anchor this union, her vows, a thread weaving Artois' wealth into Habsburg power. The empire is a mosaic of rivalries, with Bavaria and Bohemia vying for dominance, and Italy's cities tempting Habsburg greed. Blanche's marriage secures Artois' trade routes for Rudolf, her dowry of Flemish cloth markets, a glittering prize. You hear the rustle of her sleeves embroidered with Artois lilies as she navigates the court. Her presence steadies the room like a candle in a draught. A quirky tidbit: Blanche carried a tiny reliquary said to hold a saint's bone, which she touched for courage before councils, a habit some swore swayed even the gruffest duke. You smile, picturing their raised brows, half expecting divine aid. Historians still argue whether Blanche's marriage strengthened Habsburg unity or merely delayed its fractures. The mainstream fact is clear by 1300. The Holy Roman Empire's dynastic marriages, like Blanche's, shaped over half its territorial pacts. Her union ties Artois' ports to Habsburg, ambition a shield against French encroachment. You watch her at a banquet, the air rich with roasted boar and spiced wine. She speaks of Flemish weavers, her voice calm but firm, reminding lords of her dowry's worth. A jest lands, a knight quips that empire politics is like a chessboard. Too many kings, not enough pawns. Laughter ripples, but you catch the tension in the room. Koa the scribe is here, his quill shaking as he records Rudolph's decrees, his journey from Denmark leaving him awed by Blanche's poise. He spills ink, and Lonnie, her braided cord necklace catching the torchlight, nudges him with a grin. "Careful, Koa, or you'll blot the empire's map." She teases, her voice a soft tether. Tua, leaning on his carved staff, watches Blanche, murmuring, "A queen's grace is her armor stronger than steel." Their presence grounds you, their gestures, like Lonnie smoothing Blanche's veil, or Koa whispering a prayer, humanizing the court's grandeur. You feel the pulse of history each moment, a knot in the empire's web. The ceremony unfolds in Vienna's stone cathedral. the air thick with frankincense and chants. Blanche's vows, clear as a bell, bind her to Rudolph and Artois, to the Habsburgs. You stand among the crowd, catching Rudolph's glance. His ambition burns like a forge, but Blanche's eyes hold a quiet resolve. Danger stirs. Bavarian envoys, their smiles sharp hint at challenging Habsburg claims if Artois' wealth flows too freely. You sense Blanche's strength like a river carving stone as she counters with the talk of shared trade. Another jest slips in a minstrel, sings of a lord who wed for land but found only taxes, and the crowd chuckles though some eye the Bavarians warily. As the feast begins, you walk with Blanche through the torchlit hall, the clink of goblets mingling with murmured plots. She pauses by a window, the night air sharp with pine, and confides in Lonnie. Rudolph seeks empires, but I seek Artois' safety. She whispers, her reliquary tucked close. Lonnie, twisting her necklace, urges her to trust her wit like a weaver threading a loom. You admire Blanche's clarity, her youth no match for her cunning. The third jest lands a lady jests that Bavaria's envoy has a cloak so grand it hides his scheming heart. The room laughs, but Blanche's gaze stays sharp, reading the envoy's bow like a cipher. As starlight spills through Vienna's arches, you linger by a stone pillar, the air cool with wax and earth. Blanche's marriage is a chain, yet delicate like links under strain. Can she temper Rudolph's greed or outmaneuver Bavaria's plots? Koa, his inkpot steady, watches Blanche's reliquary with quiet wonder. Lonnie, her necklace a soft gleam, nudges him with encouragement. Tua, his staff tracing the floor, murmurs, "Grace is a river deep and enduring." The empire's heart beats beyond, and Blanche's choices forge its path. You feel her resolve, a quiet hum, and wonder if this union will stand. You find yourself in the misty hills of England, where the air carries the scent of damp wool and the distant clang of forges. Elizabeth of Rhuddlan, a princess with a quick smile and a steely resolve, stands ready to bind England's ambitions to its restless Welsh frontier. Her marriage to John of Holland in 1297 is a calculated step, strengthening England's grip on Wales amid simmering rebellions. You feel the weight of her embroidered cloak, the eyes of English lords watching her like hawks over a field. Imagine holding a polished goblet. How firmly do you grip it when a single vow could quell a revolt? Elizabeth's task is to cement this alliance, her union a bridge between royal power and noble loyalty. England's court is a tangle of tensions, with Welsh chieftains testing King Edward I's rule and Scotland's borders bristling with defiance. Elizabeth's marriage secures Dutch support, his fleet's a bulwark against Welsh uprisings, while her dowry of Marcher lands bolsters her influence. You hear the rustle of her gown, stitched with England's leopards, as she moves through the hall. Her presence is a quiet force, like a river, smoothing stone. A quirky tidbit. Elizabeth carried a small silver bell, said to have been blessed by a Welsh hermit, which she rang to calm heated councils, a charm some swore tamed even the fiercest baron. You grin, picturing grizzled lords startled by its chime. Historians still argue whether Elizabeth's marriage truly pacified Wales or merely delayed its unrest. The mainstream fact is clear. By 1300, England's royal marriages, like Elizabeth's, secured over half its border alliances, anchoring noble fealty. Her union strengthens Dutch ties in Edward's campaigns, a shield against Welsh spears. You watch her, at a feast the air rich, with roasted mutton and mulled cider. She speaks of Marcher trade, her voice warm but firm, reminding lords of her dowry's value. A jest lands, a knight quips that Welsh rebels are like sheep stubborn, but easily herded with a good dog. Laughter ripples, but you catch the unease in the room. Koa the scribe is here, his quill trembling as he records the vows, his journey from the Holy Roman Empire, leaving him awed by Elizabeth's grace. He fumbles a parchment, and Lonnie, her braided cord necklace glinting, steadies him with a smirk. "Steady, Koa, or you'll ride us into Wales," she teases, her voice a soft anchor. Tua, leaning on his carved staff, watches Elizabeth, murmuring, "A queen's charm is her spear, sharper than steel." Their presence grounds you. Their gestures, like Lonnie adjusting Elizabeth's sleeve, or Koa whispering a prayer, softening the court's grandeur. You feel the pulse of history each moment, a thread in England's tapestry. The ceremony unfolds in Westminster's stone chapel, the air thick with wax and incense. Elizabeth's vows, clear as a lark's song, bind her to John and England to Dutch might. You stand among the crowd, catching John's nod. His loyalty is fierce, but his temper matches the Welsh winds. Danger stirs Welsh envoys. Their smiles tight hint at raids if Marcher lands are taxed too heavily. You sense Elizabeth's resolve, like a flame in the mist, as she counters with talk of shared tolls. Another jest slips in a minstrel, sings of a lord who wed for peace, but found only quarrels, and the crowd chuckles, though some eye the Welsh warily. As the feast begins, you walk with Elizabeth through the torchlit hall, the clink of tankards mingling with murmured plots. She pauses by a fire, its crackle, a steady hum, and confides in Lonnie. "John seeks glory, but I seek Wales tamed," she whispers, her silver bell tucked close. Lonnie, twisting her necklace, urges her to trust her warmth like a hearth in winter. You admire Elizabeth's clarity, her youth no barrier to her will. The third jest lands a lady jests that the Welsh envoy's cloak is so patched it maps his rebel trails. The room laughs, but Elizabeth's gaze stays sharp, reading the envoy's bow like a cipher. As mist curls outside Westminster, you pause by a crackling fire, its glow warming the damp air. Elizabeth's marriage is a wall, yet fragile, like stone against a gale. Will she soften John's temper, or quell Welsh defiance, Koa? His quill-swift eyes, Elizabeth's bell with a faint smile, his nerves fading. Lonnie, her necklace, catching the firelight, whispers praise to him. Tua, his staff resting, murmurs, "Charm is a bridge crossed with care." The hills beyond whisper, and Elizabeth's vows shape England's frontier. You feel her warmth, a steady glow, and wonder how this pact will hold. You glide into the sun-drenched halls of Milan, where the air hums with the scent of citrus and ambition, and the murmur of silk-clad courtiers fills the space. Caterina Visconti, a young noblewoman with a keen wit and a guarded smile, stands at the heart of Italy's intricate power web. Her marriage to Gian Galeazzo Visconti in 1380 is a masterstroke, weaving Milan's rising star into the tapestry of Italian schemes. You feel the weight of her jeweled headdress, the eyes of Milanese lords sizing her up like merchants over a ledger. Imagine holding a velvet purse. How tightly do you clutch it, when a single vow could shift a city's fate? Caterina's task is to solidify this union, her marriage a thread binding Visconti ambition to Milan's wealth. Milan's court is a chessboard of rivalries, with Venice and Florence eyeing its trade routes, and Pavia's scholars fueling its prestige. Caterina's marriage cements Gian Galeazzo's claim to Milan's leadership, her dowry of vineyards and tolls enriching his coffers. You hear the rustle of her gown, embroidered with Visconti serpents, as she glides through the hall. Her presence is a quiet storm, like a breeze before a tempest. A quirky tidbit, Katerina kept a small ivory comb etched with a crescent moon, which she touched for luck. Before councils, a habit some swore softened even the sternest banker. You smile, picturing their raised brows, half expecting its charm. Historians still argue whether Katerina's marriage propelled Milan's dominance or merely masked its internal feuds. The mainstream fact is clear by the 1380s. Milan's dynastic marriages, like Katerina's, secured over half its trade alliances, anchoring its rise. Her union strengthens Gian Galeazzo's grip, a shield against Venetian plots. You watch her at a banquet, the air rich with roasted capon and spiced wine. She speaks of Po Valley harvests, her voice smooth but firm, reminding lords of her dowry's worth. A jest lands a merchant quips that Milan's politics is like a market too many haggle, too few pay. Laughter ripples, but you catch the tension in the room. Koa the scribe is here, his quill trembling as he records trade pacts, his journey from England, leaving him awed by Katerina's poise. He drops a parchment, and Lani, her braided cord necklace glinting, catches it with a grin. Easy, Koa, or you'll trade Milan for Venice. She teases, her voice a warm thread in the opulent hall. Tua, leaning on his carved staff, watches Katerina murmuring. A lady's wit is her coin sharper than gold. Their presence grounds you, their gestures like Lani adjusting Katerina's sleeve, or Koa whispering a prayer, softening the court's grandeur. You feel the pulse of history, each moment a knot in Italy's web. The ceremony unfolds in Milan's stone basilica, the air thick with myrrh and chants. Katerina's vows, clear as a bell, bind her to Gian Galeazzo, and Milan to Visconti power. You stand among the crowd, catching Gian Galeazzo's glance. His ambition burns like a forge, but Katerina's eyes hold a spark of cunning. Danger stirs Venetian envoys, their smiles sharp hint at blocking Milan's trade if tolls rise. You sense Katerina's resolve like a flame in the dusk as she counters with talk of shared markets. Another jest slips in a minstrel, sings of a lord who wed for wealth, but found only debts, and the crowd chuckles, though some eye the Venetians warily. As the feast begins, you walk with Katerina through the torchlit hall, the clink of goblets mingling with murmured plots. She pauses by a fresco, its colors vivid with hunts, and confides in Lani. Gian seeks empires, but I seek Milan's heart, she whispers, her ivory comb tucked close. Lani, twisting her necklace, urges her to trust her guile, like a merchant weighing silver. You admire Katerina's clarity, her youth no match for her vision. The third jest lands a lady, jests that Venice's envoy has a cloak so fine it hides his scheming tides. The room laughs, but Katerina's gaze stays sharp, reading the envoy's bow like a cipher. As dusk settles over Milan, you stand by a frescoed wall, the air soft with citrus and wax. Katerina's marriage is a tower, yet delicate like stone in a quake. Can she guide Gian Galeazzo's ambition, or thwart Venice's schemes? Koa, his parchment, crisp, studies Katerina's comb with quiet awe. Lani, her necklace glinting, offers him a gentle jest, her voice a warm breeze. Tua, his staff still murmurs, wit is a market traded with skill. The city's lights flicker, and Matthias's choices shape Milan's heart. You feel her cunning, a steady pulse, and wonder if this bond will endure. You step into the shadowed halls of Hungary, where the air carries the scent of burning wax and the distant clang of swords. Mary of Hungary, a young queen with a crown too heavy for her years, stands poised to secure a contested throne. Her marriage to Sigismund of Luxembourg in 1385 is a desperate gambit, binding Hungary's fractured court to a rising star in the Holy Roman Empire. You feel the weight of her jeweled coronet, the eyes of Magyar nobles watching her like wolves circling a fire. Imagine gripping a chalice of spiced wine. How steady is your hand when a single vow could silence a rebellion? Mary's task is to stabilize her rule, her union, a thread weaving Hungary's survival into Luxembourg's ambition. Hungary's court is a storm of rivalries, with Croatian lords defying her claim, and Poland's shadow looming over succession disputes. Mary's marriage secures Sigismund's military, might his armies a shield against rebels, while her dowry of Transylvanian mines bolsters his coffers. You hear the rustle of her velvet gown embroidered with Hungary's double cross as she moves through the hall. Her presence is a quiet flame, like a candle in a gale. A quirky tidbit: Mary carried a small amber pendant said to glow faintly in darkness, a gift from a Carpathian monk who claimed it steadied the heart. You smile, picturing skeptical barons eyeing it, half hoping for its power. Historians still argue whether Mary's marriage saved Hungary's throne or merely delayed its chaos. The mainstream fact is clear: by the 1380s, Hungary's dynastic marriages, like Mary's, secured alliances that preserved its sovereignty. Her union with Sigismund ties Hungary to imperial ambitions, a bulwark against French schemes. You watch her at a banquet, the air thick with roasted venison and mead. She speaks of Danubian trade, her voice soft but unyielding, reminding lords of her dowry's worth. A jest lands, jesting a knight quips that Hungarian politics is like a noble. Too many titles, not enough land. Laughter echoes, but you catch the tension in the room. Koa the scribe is here, his quill trembling as he records the vows, his journey from his travels leaving him awed by Mary's resolve. He fumbles an arrow, and Lani, her braided cord necklace glinting in the torchlight, catches it with a grin. "Careful, Koa, or you'll crown the wrong king," she says, her voice a warm jest. Another jest lands softly. A bard chuckles. A king's court is like a river, calm above, treacherous below. The hall stirs, but Mary's smile holds firm. Tua, leaning on his carved staff, watches her, murmuring. The queen's heart beats stronger than stone. Their presence grounds you, their gestures, Lani's gentle nudge, Koa's stifled laugh softening the court's weight. You feel history's pulse, each moment binding Hungary's fate. The ceremony in Buda's stone cathedral is solemn, the air heavy with incense and chants. Mary's eyes meet Harold's, her vows clear as a bell, tying Hungary to Luxembourg's might. You stand among the crowd, catching Harold's gaze. His ambition burns, but Mary's courage shines brighter. Yet danger stirs Croatian lords, their smiles sharp as daggers, hint at rebellion if taxes rise. You sense Mary's strength, like a river carving rock as she counters with talk of shared tolls. Another jest slips in, jesting that a minstrel sings lightly of a lord who wed for peace but found only strife, and the crowd chuckles, though some eye the Croatians warily with caution. As the feast unfolds, you walk with Mary through the torchlit hall, the clink of goblets mingling with whispered plots. She pauses by a tapestry, its threads depicting a stag hunt, and confides in Lani. "You know I seek Hungary whole," she whispers, her amber pendant close. Lani, twisting her corded necklace, urges her to trust her fire like a smith forging steel. You admire Mary's clarity, her youth no match for her will. A third jest lands gently. A lady muses that Croatia's envoy's beard is so thick it might hide his rebel oaths. The room hums with laughter, but Mary's gaze stays sharp, unwavering. As shadows deepen in Buda's hall, you linger by a tapestry, its threads glowing with torchlight. Mary's marriage is a flame yet fragile, like a spark in a gale. Will she temper Sigismund's fire or silence Croatia's rebellion? Koa, his quill steady eyes, Mary's pendant with newfound calm. Lonnie, her necklace, a faint gleam, nudges him with a warm smile. Tua, his staff tapping softly, murmurs, "Courage is a forge shaped by will." The Danube glimmers beyond, and Mary's vows carve Hungary's path. You feel her strength, a quiet tide, and wonder how this union will stand. You sail into the sunlit courts of Sicily, where the air is thick with the scent of orange blossoms and the murmur of Mediterranean ambition. Constance of Sicily, a princess with a gaze as fierce as the island's volcanoes, stands ready to fuel Aragon's conquest. Her marriage to Peter III of Aragon in 1361 is a fiery pact binding Sicily's contested crown to Aragon's naval might. You feel the weight of her emerald-encrusted veil, the eyes of Sicilian nobles watching her like gulls over a storm-tossed sea. Imagine holding a goblet of sweet wine. How steady is your grip when a single vow could ignite a war? Constance's task is to anchor this alliance, her union a spark for Aragon's Sicilian dreams. Sicily's court is a crucible of rivalries with Naples, pressing claims, and Byzantine traders eyeing its ports. Constance's marriage secures Aragon's foothold, her dowry of coastal fortresses strengthening Peter's grip. You hear the rustle of her silk gown, embroidered with Sicily's Trinacria, as she glides through the hall. Her presence is a gathering storm like clouds over Etna. A quirky tidbit: Constance wore a coral ring said to protect against shipwrecks, a gift from a Palermo fisherman who swore it saved his life. You smile, picturing skeptical lords glancing at it, half hoping for its luck. Historians still argue whether Constance's marriage tipped Sicily into Aragon's hands or merely prolonged its strife. The mainstream fact is clear. By the 1360s, Sicily's dynastic marriages like Constance's shaped over half its political alignments, securing Aragon's Mediterranean rise. Her union ties Sicily's ports to Aragon's fleets, a shield against Neapolitan raids. You watch her at a banquet, the air rich with grilled swordfish and aniseed wine. She speaks of Sicilian olive groves, her voice calm but unyielding, reminding lords of her dowry's worth. A jest lands, a knight quips that Sicilian politics is like a net cast wide, but full of holes. Laughter ripples, but you catch the tension in the room. Koa the scribe is here, his quill trembling as he records the vows, his journey from Hungary leaving him awed by Constance's fire. He fumbles a parchment, and Lonnie, her braided cord necklace glinting, steadies him with a grin. "Easy, Koa, or you'll sail us to Naples," she teases, her voice a warm thread in the sultry hall. Tua, leaning on his carved staff, watches Constance, murmuring, "A queen's will is her tide, stronger than stone." Their presence grounds you, their gestures like Lonnie adjusting Constance's sleeve, or Koa whispering a prayer, softening the court's grandeur. You feel the pulse of history, each moment a knot in Sicily's web. The ceremony unfolds in Palermo's stone cathedral, the air heavy with myrrh and chants. Constance's vows, clear as a bell, bind her to Peter and Sicily to Aragon's ambition. You stand among the crowd, catching Peter's glance. His hunger for conquest burns like a beacon, but Constance's eyes hold a spark of resolve. Danger stirs Neapolitan envoys, their smiles sharp hint at blockading Sicily's ports if Aragon presses too hard. You sense Constance's strength like a flame on the sea as she counters with talk of shared trade. Another jest slips in, a minstrel sings of a lord who wed for harbors, but found only storms, and the crowd chuckles, though some eye the Neapolitans warily. As the feast begins, you walk with Constance through the torchlit hall, the clink of goblets mingling with murmured plots. She pauses by a mosaic, its tiles gleaming with ships, and confides in Lani. Peter seeks empires, but I seek Sicily's soul. She whispers, her coral ring tucked close. Lani, twisting her necklace, urges her to trust her fire, like a sailor reading the stars. You admire Constance's clarity, her youth no match for her will. The third jest lands a lady jests that Naples' envoy has a cloak so grand it hides his scheming waves. The room laughs, but Constance's gaze stays sharp, reading the envoy's bow like a cipher. As waves crash beyond Palermo, you pause by a mosaic, its tiles shimmering with sea light. Constance's marriage is a spark, yet fragile, like a flame on the tide. Can she sway Peter's conquest or outwit Naples' threats? Koa, his parchment, neat gazes at Constance's ring, his awe deepening. Lani, her necklace catching the glow, whispers encouragement to him. Tua, his staff, still murmurs, will is a current strong but unseen. The Mediterranean hums, and Constance's choices shape Sicily's course. You feel her fire a steady beat, and wonder if this pact will hold. You wander into the bustling courts of Hainault, where the air hums with the scent of damp linen and the clatter of merchants' carts beyond the walls. Philippa of Hainault, a young noblewoman with a warm laugh and a shrewd mind, stands ready to link England to the Low Countries' thriving trade. Her marriage to Edward III of England in 1328 is a masterful stroke, binding England's ambitions to Flemish wealth and weaving a delicate thread in Europe's economic tapestry. You feel the weight of her fur-lined cloak, the eyes of Flemish lords watching her like traders over a ledger. Imagine holding a bolt of fine cloth. How carefully do you trace its weave when a single vow could shift markets? Philippa's task is to strengthen this alliance, her union, a bridge between England's might and Hainault's commerce. The Low Countries are a hive of rivalries, with Bruges and Ghent vying for trade dominance and France eyeing their ports. Philippa's marriage secures Flemish wool for England's looms, her dowry of toll rights and guild ties enriching Edward's coffers. You hear the rustle of her gown embroidered with Hainault's lions as she glides through the hall. Her presence is a steady breeze, like a wind filling a sail. A quirky tidbit, Philippa carried a small brass key said to unlock a merchant's chest, blessed for prosperity, a gift from a Bruges guildmaster. You smile, picturing skeptical knights eyeing it, half hoping for its luck. Historians still argue whether Philippa's marriage tipped England's economy toward Flanders or merely eased tensions in the 100 Years' War. The mainstream fact is clear by the 1320s. England's dynastic marriages, like Philippa's, anchored over half its trade packs, fueling its wool exports. Her union ties England's ports to Flemish markets, a shield against French blockades. You watch her at a banquet, the air rich with roasted goose and spiced ale. She speaks of Flemish weavers, her voice warm but firm, reminding lords of her dowry's worth. A jest lands, a merchant quips that trade packs are like weaving tangle the threads, and you're left with knots. Laughter ripples, but you catch the tension in the room. Koa the scribe is here, his quill trembling as he records trade agreements, his journey from far lands leaving him awed by Philippa's grace. He spills an arrow, and Lani, her braided cord necklace, catches the light, catches it with a grin. "Careful," she says, "or you'll jest us to France." She teases, her voice a warm jest in the lively hall. Another jest lands softly, a bard muses. A trader's smile hides more than a chest's lock. The hall stirs, but Philippa's warmth holds firm. Tua, leaning on his staff, watches her, murmuring, "A queen's heart is her coin, brighter than gold." Their presence grounds you, their gestures, her gentle nudge, his stifled chuckle, softening the court's weight. You feel history's pulse, each moment binding England's threads. The ceremony in York's stone minster is radiant. The hall glows with the scents of wax and sea air. Her vows clear as a lark's song, she binds England to Hainault's might. You stand among the crowd, catching Edward III's eyes. His ambition burns, but Philippa's gaze holds wisdom, a spark of courage. Yet peril stirs Danish nobles, their smiles sharp as steel, hint at taxing Flemish goods if England grows too bold. You sense her strength, like a river, smoothing stones as she counters stone with talk of shared trade. Another jest whispers in a minstrel, singing lightly of a lord who wed for gold, but found only Ledger's dreams, and the crowd laughs softly, though some eye the Danes with cautious eyes. As the feast unfolds, you walk with Philippa through the torchlit hall, the clang of goblets mingling with murmurs. She pauses by a tapestry woven with ship's sails and confides in Lonnie. "You see, I seek England's strength," she whispers, her brass key close. Lonnie, twisting her corded necklace, urges her to trust her warmth like a merchant weighing gold. You admire Philippa's clarity, her youth no match for her vision. A third jest lands gently. A lady muses that Denmark's envoy's boots are so fine they tread on Flemish dreams. The hall hums with laughter, but Philippa's gaze stays sharp, unwavering. As twilight falls over York, you stand by a woven tapestry, its threads soft with candlelight. Philippa's marriage is a loom, yet delicate like threads under strain. Will she guide Edward's dreams or counter France's greed? Koa, his quill swift eyes, Philippa's key with quiet wonder. Lonnie, her necklace glinting, offers him a gentle nod. Tua, his staff resting, murmurs. Warmth is a harbor safe, but earned. The North Sea whispers, and Philippa's vows weave England's trade. You feel her wisdom, a gentle hum, and wonder how this bond will fare. You step into the sun-warmed courts of Portugal, where the air carries the scent of salt and cork, and the distant crash of Atlantic waves hums beyond the walls. Beatrice of Castile, a princess with a steady gaze and a heart full of resolve, stands poised to fuel Portugal's maritime ambitions. Her marriage to Afonso IV of Portugal in 1309 is a bold pact, binding Castile's wealth to Portugal's seafaring dreams. You feel the weight of her sapphire-stitched veil, the eyes of Portuguese nobles watching her, like sailors charting a new course. Imagine holding a carved seashell. How firmly do you grasp it when a single vow could launch a fleet? Beatrice's task is to strengthen this alliance, her union, a sail catching the wind of Portugal's expansion. Portugal's court is a swirl of ambition, with Castilian rivals pressing borders and Moorish traders tempting coastal markets. Beatrice's marriage secures Castile's gold for Portugal's ships, her dowry of border estates, and trade rights bolstering Afonso's coffers. You hear the rustle of her gown, embroidered with Castile's castles, as she moves through the hall. Her presence is a steady tide, like a current guiding a vessel. A quirky tidbit, Beatrice carried a small pearl pendant said to bring fair winds, a gift from a Lisbon sailor who swore it saved his ship. You smile, picturing skeptical lords eyeing it, half hoping for its magic. Historians still debate whether Beatrice's marriage sparked Portugal's naval rise or merely eased Castilian tensions. The mainstream fact is clear. By 1307, Portugal's dynastic marriages, like Beatrice's, anchored over half its trade alliances, paving its maritime path. Her union ties Portugal's ports to Castile's resources, a shield against Moorish raids. You watch her at a banquet, the air rich with grilled cod and spiced wine. She speaks of Algarve harbors, her voice calm but firm, reminding lords of her dowry's worth. A jest lands, a merchant quips that Portugal's politics is like sailing smooth until the squall hits. Laughter ripples, but you catch the tension in the room. Koa, the scribe, is here, his quill trembling as he records trade pacts his journey from Hainault, leaving him awed by Beatrice's poise. He fumbles a parchment, and Lonnie, her braided cord necklace glinting, steadies him with a grin. "Easy, Koa, or you'll chart us to Castile." She teases, her voice a warm thread in the lively hall. Tua, leaning on his carved staff, murmurs, "A queen's will is her compass, truer than stars." Their presence grounds you, their gestures, like Lonnie adjusting Beatrice's sleeve, or Koa whispering a prayer, softening the court's grandeur. You feel the pulse of history, each moment a knot in Portugal's weave. The ceremony unfolds in Lisbon's cathedral, the air thick with salt and incense. Beatrice's vows, clear as a gull's cry, bind her to Afonso and Portugal, to Castile's might. You stand among the crowd, catching Afonso's gaze. His ambition burns like a beacon, but Beatrice's eyes hold a spark of cunning. Danger stirs Castilian envoys, their smiles sharp hint at taxing Portuguese goods if borders shift. You sense Beatrice's resolve like a flame on the sea as she counters with talk of shared markets. You drift into the grand halls of Bohemia, where the air carries the scent of pine and parchment, and the distant chime of Prague's bells echoes through the stone corridors. Agnes of Habsburg, a princess with a quiet grace and a mind sharp as a blade, stands ready to bolster Bohemia's rising power. Her marriage to Wenceslaus II of Bohemia in 1300 is a calculated pact weaving Habsburg ambition into Bohemia's growing influence in Central Europe. You feel the weight of her velvet mantle, the eyes of Bohemian lords watching her like scribes over a chronicle. Imagine holding a quill. How steady is your hand when a single vow could shift an empire's heart? Agnes's task is to cement this alliance, her union, a thread binding Habsburg loyalty to Bohemia's crown. Bohemia's court is a crucible of ambition, with Poland and Hungary eyeing its silver mines and the Holy Roman Empire pressing its claims. Agnes's marriage secures Habsburg support for Wenceslaus, her dowry of Austrian estates and trade privileges, strengthening his coffers. You hear the rustle of her gown embroidered with Habsburg eagles as she glides through the hall. Her presence is a steady flame, like a lantern in a storm. A quirky tidbit: Agnes carried a small crystal vial, said to hold water from a sacred spring. A gift from a Corinthian monk who claimed it sharpened the mind. You smile, picturing skeptical barons eyeing it, half hoping for its clarity. Historians still argue whether Agnes's marriage propelled Bohemia's golden age or merely masked its internal feuds. The mainstream fact is clear. By 1300, Bohemia's dynastic marriages, like Agnes's, anchored over half its political alliances, fueling its cultural and economic rise. Her union ties Habsburg armies to Bohemia's mines, a shield against Polish raids. You watch her at a banquet, the air rich with roasted stag and mulled wine. She speaks of Vltava trade routes, her voice soft but unyielding, reminding lords of her dowry's worth. A jest lands a night, quips that Bohemian politics is like a forge hot and full of sparks. Laughter ripples, but you catch the tension in the room. Koa the scribe is here, his quill trembling as he records the vows, his journey from Portugal, leaving him awed by Agnes's poise. He drops an inkpot, and Lonnie, her braided cord necklace glinting, catches it with a grin. "Careful, Koa, or you'll scribe us into Poland." She teases, her voice a warm thread in the grand hall. Tua, leaning on his carved staff, watches Agnes, murmuring, "A queen's wit is her crown brighter than gold." Their presence grounds you, their gestures like Lani smoothing Agnes's sleeve, or Koa whispering a prayer, softening the court's grandeur. You feel the pulse of history each moment, a knot in Bohemia's tapestry. The ceremony unfolds in Prague's stone cathedral, the air heavy with frankincense and chants. Agnes's vows, clear as a bell, bind her to Wenceslas and Bohemia, to Habsburg might. You stand among the crowd, catching Wenceslas's glance. His ambition burns like a forge, but Agnes's eyes hold a spark of resolve. Danger stirs Polish envoys, their smiles sharp hint at seizing Bohemian minds if trade shifts. You sense Agnes's strength like a river carving stone as she counters with talk of shared tolls. Another jest slips in a minstrel, sings of a lord who wed for wealth, but found only quarrels, and the crowd chuckles, though some eye the Poles warily. As the feast begins, you walk with Agnes through the torchlit hall, the clink of goblets mingling with murmured plots. She pauses by a stained glass window, its colors dancing with saints, and confides in Lani. Wenceslas seeks glory, but I seek Bohemia's heart, she whispers, her crystal vial tucked close. Lani, twisting her necklace, urges her to trust her guile like a scholar reading stars. You admire Agnes's clarity, her youth no match for her vision. The third jest lands a lady jests that Poland's envoy has a cloak so grand it hides his scheming tides. The room laughs, but Agnes's gaze stays sharp, reading the envoy's bow like a cipher. The night deepens, and you linger in the hall's glow, the air thick with hope and hazard. Agnes's marriage is a cornerstone, but it's fragile, like a bridge in a gale. You ponder her next move. Will she sway Wenceslas with charm or outwit Poland's greed? Koa scribbles, Lani whispers courage, and Tua taps his staff, muttering that loyalty is like a river deep until the banks break. The stars outside gleam, but here Agnes's choices shape Bohemia's path. You feel the weight of her vow, each word a stitch in Europe's vast design, and you wonder how this alliance will endure. You slip into the gilded courts of France, where the air hums with the scent of rosewater and the rustle of silk, and the distant toll of Paris bells weaves through the halls. Clemence of Hungary, a princess with a serene grace and a heart steeled by loss, stands poised to navigate France's dynastic crisis. Her marriage to Louis VII of France in 1315 is a delicate thread binding Hungary's prestige to a throne teetering on the edge of chaos. You feel the weight of her pearl-stitched veil, the eyes of French nobles watching her like scribes over a contested will. Imagine holding a silver rosary. How gently do you trace its beads when a single vow could shape a succession? Clemence's task is to steady this union, her marriage a beacon in France's stormy court. France's court is a labyrinth of intrigue, with the Capuchin line faltering and England's ambitions stirring across the channel. Clemence's marriage secures Hungary's diplomatic weight, her dowry of Danubian trade rights, and gold bolstering Louis's treasury. You hear the murmur of her gown embroidered with Hungary's lilies as she glides through the hall. Her presence is a quiet tide, like a river calming a storm. A quirky tidbit: Clemence carried a small enamel locket said to hold a lock of her mother's hair. A keepsake, some swore, brought her clarity in heated councils. You smile, picturing skeptical lords eyeing it, half hoping for its comfort. Historians still argue whether Clemence's marriage stabilized France's succession or merely delayed its fractures. The mainstream fact is clear. By the 1310s, France's dynastic marriages, like Clemence's, anchored over half its diplomatic pacts, shaping the Hundred Years' War's roots. Her union ties Hungary's influence to France's throne, a shield against English claims. You watch her at a banquet, the air rich with roasted peacock and spiced mead. She speaks of Carpathian markets, her voice soft but firm, reminding lords of her dowry's worth. A jest lands a courtier quips that French politics is like a dance graceful until someone steps on a toe. Laughter ripples, but you catch the tension in the room. Koa the scribe is here, his quill trembling as he records the vows, his journey from Bohemia, leaving him awed by Clemence's calm. He fumbles a parchment, and Lani, her braided cord necklace glinting, steadies him with a grin. "Easy, Koa, or you'll crown us in Hungary," she teases, her voice a warm thread in the opulent hall. Tua, leaning on his carved staff, watches Clemence murmuring, "A queen's heart is her shield, stronger than steel." Their presence grounds you, their gestures, like Lani adjusting Clemence's sleeve, or Koa whispering a prayer, softening the court's grandeur. You feel the pulse of history each moment, a knot in France's tapestry. The ceremony unfolds in Notre Dame's shadow, the air thick with incense and Latin chants. Clemence's vows, clear as a lark's song, bind her to Louis and France, to Hungary's might. You stand among the crowd, catching Louis's glance. His urgency burns like a torch. But Clemence's eyes hold a spark of resolve. Danger stirs Burgundian envoys, their smiles sharp hint at challenging the succession if Louis's heir falters. You sense Clemence's strength like a flame in the dusk as she counters with the talk of shared tolls. Another jest slips in, a minstrel sings of a lord who wed for heirs but found only disputes, and the crowd chuckles, though some eye the Burgundians warily. As the feast begins, you walk with Clemence through the torchlit hall, the clink of goblets mingling with murmured plots. She pauses by a tapestry, its threads depicting a hunt, and confides in Lani. "Louis seeks a line, but I seek France's peace," she whispers, her enamel locket tucked close. Lani, twisting her necklace, urges her to trust her grace like a weaver threading a loom. You admire Clemence's clarity, her youth no match for her wisdom. The third jest lands a lady jests that Burgundy's envoy has a cloak so fine it hides his scheming roots. The room laughs, but Clemence's gaze stays sharp, reading the envoy's bow like a cipher. You stand at the crossroads of 14th century Europe, where the air hums with the echoes of vows and the faint clink of goblets from distant feasts. The tapestry of royal brides and their political alliances is nearly complete, and you feel the weight of their choices, each one a thread that has redrawn the continent's map. From Eleanor's pact in Aragon to Clemence's delicate dance in France, these women have shaped empires with their courage and cunning. Imagine holding a woven cloth, its patterns intricate with lions, eagles, and lilies. How carefully do you trace its threads, knowing they hold a world together? Your task now is to reflect on their legacy, seeing how these marriages forged a new Europe. The continent is a mosaic of shifting borders, with kingdoms rising and falling like tides. These brides, Eleanor, Isabella, Joanna, and the rest, wove alliances that quelled wars, sparked trade, and birthed dynasties. You recall Eleanor's falcon, soaring over Aragon's court, a symbol of her fierce spirit, and Isabella's prayer book, steadying Castile's resolve. Each woman brought her own strength, from Margaret's rune amulet in Denmark to Constance's coral ring in Sicily. Their dowries lands, gold and tolls were the currency of power, but their wit and will were the true forge of history. A quirky tidbit. Some chroniclers claim these queens shared a secret cipher, a code of gestures used in councils to signal allies. Though no proof survives, you smile at the thought of their subtle defiance. Historians still argue whether these marriages truly unified Europe or merely delayed its conflicts. The mainstream fact is undeniable. By the 1300s, over 70% of Europe's political alliances stemmed from dynastic unions, reshaping its borders for centuries. These brides didn't just join kingdoms, they rewrote the rules of power, their children inheriting thrones from Lisbon to Prague. You walk through an imagined hall, its walls hung with their portraits, Philippa's brass key glinting, Agnes's crystal vial catching the light. Their stories linger like the scent of spiced wine at a feast. A jest lands a scribe quips that royal weddings are like treaties grand on parchment, messy in practice. You chuckle, but the truth stings. Their triumphs were hard-won. Koa the scribe is here, his quill still his journey from Castile to France, leaving him in awe of these women. He clutches a worn parchment, his ink-stained fingers steady now as if their courage has seeped into him. Lonnie, her braided cord necklace glinting, nudges him with a grin. Rest, Koa. You've chronicled enough crowns, she teases, her voice a soft anchor. Tua, leaning on his carved staff, gazes at the hall, murmuring, a queen's legacy is her tapestry woven for ages. Their presence grounds you, their gestures, like Lonnie tucking a stray hair, or Koa whispering a prayer, humanizing the sweep of history. You feel the pulse of their world, each vow a knot in Europe's weave. You pause by a window, the night air cool with the promise of stars, and reflect on their lessons. Eleanor's steady hand in Aragon taught you trust like a sailor reading the wind. Isabella's fire in Castile showed resilience like a smith forging steel. Joanna's cunning in France revealed patience like a weaver threading a loom. These women, young yet wise, faced courts of scheming lords and forged paths where none existed. Their marriages were not just pacts, but acts of faith in their kingdoms, their allies themselves. Another jest slips in. A minstrel might say, choosing a bride was like picking a horse, noble but prone to bolting. You smile, but their strength was no jest. It was a beacon. The legacy of these brides is Europe itself, its borders, its trade, its dreams. You see their influence in the ships sailing from Lisbon, the markets thriving in Flanders, the cathedrals rising in Prague. Their children carried their blood to new thrones, their alliances shaping wars and peaces yet to come. You ponder Clémence's locket, a token of her mother's love, and feel the timeless bond of family, a thread stronger than any treaty. The third jest lands. Tua mutters that kings plan empires, but queens plant the seeds. The hall seems to nod in agreement, its torches flickering like stars. As you linger, the world softens the hum of history, fading to a gentle lull. You feel the weight of their stories, each one a gift of courage and connection. Their triumphs remind you to trust your own path, to weave your own tapestry with care. The stars outside gleam, a map of their dreams, and you know their legacy endures like a river carving stone. Thank you truly for joining me through every emotion, every turn, every moment of this journey. It's been an adventure, and I'm grateful to share it with you. As we close this tale, I wish you a peaceful evening. May you have a restful night, deep sleep, and dreams filled with wonder and light. Rest well, you've earned it. And when you're ready for the next story, I'll be here waiting to journey with you again. Before you go, if you love this tale, please leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what moved you, surprised you, or lingers with you long after the story ends. Until we meet again, good night, and see you in the next adventure.